friends, and welcome back to the Particularly Peculiar podcast. We are finally debuting season 2. In this first episode, we will be covering something that is seriously spooky, and it always gives me the creeps, but I love hearing these stories. Today, we are going to be talking about black-eyed children. I am your host, Taylor. In this podcast, we delve into all that is mysterious, bizarre, and peculiar. Thank you for joining us. To our repeat listeners, welcome, our peculiar people. And to those listening for the first time, the peculiar people welcome you. So I do want to address something right off the bat. Christian is not here with me today. Unfortunately, a lot has happened in the past year. Not anything crazy, but he accepted a full-time supervisor position where he is working more of a routine schedule. And that just doesn't really allow us to be able to record together. However, I wanted to get back into the podcast and get back to recording. Christian will still be behind the scenes, and he will still be producing and editing and posting our episodes for us. However, he will likely not be joining me as often for episodes. So it is just me here today, but that's all right. I am glad to be back talking to you all. So who or what are the black-eyed children? Black-eyed children is a story I have heard from many different outlets, podcasts, Reddit, just searching the creepy things, searching what creepy things I can find on the internet, which of course I do sometimes, as one who hosts a peculiar podcast would probably do, right? First, I would like to discuss black-eyed children overall, and then we can cover a couple of encounters. Initially, I'm going to read an article that is from the Business Standard. This is written by, I believe it's Mariah Mosen. They might knock on your door on a late wintry night. You may see them approaching your car while you are waiting at the signal or a gas station. It might seem like they need help, or they might just stand there for no reason. These children do not look threatening. They would want to get into your house or your car, and they will be persistent. But suddenly you'll notice something isn't right about these kids. Their eyes, pure black from lid to lid, dead black orbs, devoid of sclera or iris, will chill up your spine. You have finally come across the black-eyed children. Black-eyed children, or black-eyed kids, is an urban legend of paranormal creatures that resemble children between the ages of 6 and 16. These creatures with pale skin and black eyes have reportedly been seen hitchhiking, panhandling, or at the doorsteps of residential homes. A dozen of stories keep circulating, all following a very similar pattern. Kids with eyes completely blacked out appear at people's homes or vehicles, knock on the door or windows, and then insist upon getting inside. Anyone who encountered them has almost immediately felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Besides blacked out eyes, these children typically appear normal. Sometimes their attire seems outdated. In extremely unusual circumstances, people have reported encountering creatures with talon-like feet. No one knows where or how these creatures pop up. Conspiracy theorists believe that black-eyed children are aliens trying to reach out to their Earth. Demonologists believe they are children of the devil himself, and if you let them in, you are allowing the devil to enter your life. They want to enter your home to call their parents. However, upon making eye contact, it seems there is a much more sinister plot to the story. This legend even crossed bodies of water and landed in the great land of the UK, where in 2014 the Daily Star wrote 3 front-page stories with sightings of the black-eyed children in the haunted pub in Staffordshire. Ghost hunters who believed that the black-eyed children were extraterrestrials, vampires, or ghosts took these alleged sightings very seriously. Nowadays, people still claim to see the black-eyed children when driving late at night, down an empty road, or outside of their window late at night, even lurking in the shadows of their room sometimes. Many people have reported seeing the black-eyed children standing in the corner of their room during episodes of sleep paralysis, or even waking up in the middle of the night because they sensed someone was watching them, and in the shadows, standing, were the black-eyed children. So that was a great article. I love the writing in that article, and that sums it up really. It's so creepy to me that there are just so many different scenarios that these children can be found in. It almost makes it like you never know if they're just going to pop up, which is so scary. So let's go ahead and get into some of these encounters. I found these first few encounters from the lineup. One night, a man, let's call him Dave, was dozing in the spare bed in his infant daughter's room when he heard a strange bump outside his house. Initially, Dave thought nothing of it, but the thumps continued. So eventually he thought, maybe it's the cat. So he decided to check the porch. Their family cat was nowhere to be found. He then walked into the kitchen and he noticed two figures loitering outside his front door. As soon as Dave noticed them, they started knocking. He recalled both boys were around 10 or 11, and since it was late at night, he figured he would open the door and check if everything was okay with these children. He only opened the door a crack, but he recalled them giving off a pungent, moldy odor. Now, this is common with black-eyed kids. They may smell funny, they may be dressed in old-timey clothes, or they may just say something very unusual, such as this. "May we use your telegraph?" one of the boys asked, looking up at the man. To his horror, the man realized then that both boys had eyes that were completely black. Ignoring the odd remark about a telegraph, the man told the boy he didn't have that at his house, and thoroughly creeped out, he just shut the door. As the man slowly made his way back into his daughter's room, the two boys started banging on the door. The man grabbed his daughter out of her crib, clutched her to his chest as the boys incessantly knocked against the windows and the sides of the house. He remained crouched on the floor of the room for several hours, fighting to ignore the knocks, even though now they were only occurring every couple of minutes. Somehow, his wife slept through the commotion, like it was only him that could hear the noise that these children were making. But the moment his wife's alarm clock went off, the knocking ceased, and the black-eyed children were nowhere to be seen. Okay, so that is extremely creepy. A couple things that kind of popped up in my head when I first heard this one was, why is he just sleeping in the daughter's room? But honestly, if you've ever had a baby, I mean, having an extra room or having space in your infant's room to sleep in there at night so you don't wake the other parent is like, amazing idea. I don't know why I never thought about that. So I guess that's not too strange, right? And again, like, I don't think I'd open the door to these kids, but they only look to be 10 or 11. So, I mean, yeah, especially as a parent, you're kind of like, these kids can't be out here in the middle of the night. Now, I commend him for only opening the door a little bit, but I honestly probably just would have hollered through the door. Or maybe just called the cops right then and there and been like, hey, there's some kids around here and they look like they need help. Now, the "may we use your telegraph" thing is extremely creepy. I've heard from a couple other podcasts where they just say very odd, strange things. And I can't recall exactly what they are, but they just make you go, what? Like a kid would never say something like this, right? So, but then also sometimes kids do just say some weird shit and we don't know why. So I don't know. That one's a little creepy. Okay, so I have another one here. This is from an interview with Brian Bethel about an encounter he had. Brian has recounted this story on Monsters and Mysteries in America. I listened to an interview from him on YouTube, and then I also listened to Heebie-Jeebies TV account on YouTube recounting his story. Brian's encounter is nearly 30 years old now. This is probably the first and most famous account of the black-eyed children. Now, considering it was 30 years ago, it's not like these stories were really found on the internet at this time, although the internet was kind of taking off then. I don't really think these kids really could have been playing a prank. Again, with black-eyed kids, you think, oh, well, they're just contacts, but they would have had to get some really great contacts. And at that time, anything for special effects would have been fairly expensive, especially for young kids that age to get their hands on. Let's dive into the story. Brian was in his car alone late one night in a movie theater parking lot in a small town. He was utilizing the interior lights at the time. I believe he was writing a check or something like that, when he hears a knock at his window. He looks up to see two young boys between 9 and 12 years of age standing at his door. At first, he was pretty confused because, of course, these random-ass kids just came out of nowhere. They were both very pale. There was only one of the boys speaking for the both of them. He cracked his window to hear them a little better, but he kept it mostly rolled up. They told him they needed a ride home. They said they forgot their money at home for their movies. They lived fairly close by, but they'd like a ride home just to get there quickly and come back. Brian was thinking for a little bit and weighing his options, running the scenario through his head. But as he's thinking, the boys become more and more annoyed, begin tapping and knocking on the car. They were stating, "Come on, man, we're just kids, let us in." Eventually, the one said, "It's not like we have a gun or something." And of course, that kind of threw Brian for a loop. Brian recounted feeling more fear and mounting dread at this point. He then thinks to kind of test the kids. Well, what movie were you guys planning to see? From Brian's car, he could see the movie list, but the kids would have their backs to the marquee of the theater. They did respond with Mortal Kombat, which was showing that night. However, they said they wanted to attend the 9:30 showing, but it was now 9:50 p.m. So even if he did get them home, had them run in and grab their money, and they either got a ride back from him or made their way back another way, they'd be missing a good chunk of that movie. Not really getting there until the end, more than likely. He just felt more and more weird about the whole situation. Still weighing his options, he turns to tell them no, and that's when he noticed their black eyes. So this is interesting. I do want to mention that most people will have a feeling of dread, but not really know what is throwing them off or why they have this feeling, but they know something's wrong. It's almost like the kids are able to somehow filter out that feature or guard it in a way. But then the person finally realizes this is wrong and notices the eyes. He rolls his window up. He tells the boys, no thanks, I'm not going to give you a ride. They begin banging on the car, and the one boy begins yelling to be let in. Brian is froze with fear. Or maybe the kids are controlling him. He cannot move. And while he's sitting there, they simply stop. And calmly, the boy says, Mister, we cannot come in unless you invite us in. And that's when Brian takes off. He finally makes it home. He runs in, locks his door. He's recalling the situation, playing it over and over again in his head. He realizes that when he's backing away from the kids and trying to get away, they weren't even there anymore. They were nowhere to be found. How did they disappear in seconds? He tells a friend about this story shortly after, and before he's even finished telling the story, his friend stops him and asks if they had black eyes. Startled, Brian snaps, "How did you know that?" His friend said, "Good thing you didn't let him in. You would have ended up dead." This last story is one that was shared with Brian after he shared his own story. On a snowy night in the middle of nowhere, an elderly couple heard the sound of 3 loud knocks on their door. They opened the door and saw 2 children standing there, a boy and a girl. "Our parents will be here soon. May we come in?" The children did not make eye contact at first and kept their heads down, stood in there in the doorway. The elderly couple were hesitant, but after a while, they did let the boy and girl inside. After all, it was winter, and they surely had to be freezing. The kids settled on the couch, still keeping their heads facing down. The wife decided to make some hot cocoa, and the husband just made small talk and asked them questions that went completely unanswered. When the wife returned, she noticed one of the cats was acting scared and maybe even seemed angry with the children. "May we please use your restroom?" The wife looked at the kids, and that's when she finally saw it. The children's eyes were as black as an empty night sky. She directed them to the bathroom, returned to her husband, who was covering his face with his hand. "Did you see their eyes?" she asked the husband. He was visibly shaken. He did not respond, but pulled his hand away from his face. There was blood from a nosebleed. At exactly this time, the power suddenly went out in the house. The house was as dark as the children's eyes. The wife felt her way to the restroom, was confronted by the voice of the kids at the end of the hall. They simply uttered, "Our parents are here." The kids then exited the house, leaving the door wide open, having no issue navigating through the dark house or finding a door. The wife noticed that there were 2 men standing at the end of the driveway just waiting for the kids. The men were very tall and slender. The wife waved to them, but she did not receive that same friendly gesture. The 2 men and children then just drove away together in the one car. The power then came back on a little later after the kids left. Throughout the next week, weird things just happened around the house. 3 out of the 4 cats went missing, and eventually the 4th was found dead in a pool of its own blood. But no explanation to how it was killed. The husband continued to have nosebleeds, and finally went to the doctor, where he was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of skin cancer. That's another common thing there. It's almost like if you let them in or surrender to them in any way, it's almost like a curse. So after hearing these stories, what do you all think of the black-eyed kids? What do you think they are, or where do they come from? Are they demons, aliens, vampires, interdimensional beings? I believe all of these things have been theorized. I think it's so creepy. I could not imagine having an experience like this in my life. Now, I don't know what I believe. I don't know if I believe that they are demons. I feel like if they were demons, it might be a little more extra, you know? Like then really bad things happen once they're in your home or in your car or something like that. However, I mean, I don't know what they would be, but it's just kind of an idea. Aliens is another thing, especially with coming and saying weird things like, can I use your telegraph? Or I've heard one time if they could like have a certain food to eat. That was just a very weird combination. And that seems like something, you know, maybe someone from another planet has seen things or heard things that are very old that they think may still be relevant today. So that's a possibility. Vampires. Now that's the one where they say, you know, we can't come in unless we're invited in. That makes sense with vampires, right? We've all kind of heard that and seen that in the movies or things like that. But if vampires were real, would that be a real rule that they have? I don't know. Very interesting. Interdimensional beings. Now that is one that I really like. Again, possibly along the same vein as aliens. They come from another dimension. Maybe they're trying to get home. Maybe that's why they say, hey, I need to call my parents. My interdimensional parents. I need to call them and get home to them, right? So I don't know. Very interesting, very weird. Some definitely creepy things to think about. So I didn't think about this, you guys, but I am recording this by myself in my bedroom. And Christian's not home. Archer, my youngest, is posted up with the Nintendo Switch out in the living room. But it is quiet in my house. And I wrote these notes. I'm prepared to record this episode, but I'm creeping myself out. I literally have goosebumps right now. So I hope you guys find it as creepy as I do. So anyway, another weird thing that I thought was wild is saying how there is the idea that black-eyed children show up in sleep paralysis events. Because next week, our topic is sleep paralysis, which I hope you guys are looking forward to. I am so looking forward to it. I'm sorry this episode is going to be a little bit short. I had planned on doing this last episode with Christian. However, again, he's not available with me today. So I guess I'm going to wrap that up there, and I want to give you guys a quick little update. So I guess I'm just going to kind of go back to the beginning. So it's been a while since we've recorded last, I believe October. First, I had started a new job. That took up a lot of my time that I had before, any free time that I had to record. So I wasn't able to get around to it. Eventually, I did have to leave that job just due to not being able to find daycare, scheduling issues, and I just was not able to work there like I had hoped I would be. I really enjoyed that job. It was the first job that I took that was kind of pertaining to my human services degree. And I'm kind of bummed to have left it, but that's okay. It was just something that needed to happen. I needed to be home with my baby. Obviously, that's what the universe was kind of telling me. So I'm still home with him, and that's all right. So that was November. Then December came around, and we were all hit pretty hard, I believe, with influenza. But I have underlying health issues. I believe maybe autoimmune issues, but I know I have chronic health issues. And I was very, very sick. It took a long time for me to get better. And anyway, it ended up running through Christmas. But not only was I sick during Christmas and before Christmas and trying to plan Christmas and get everything ready, our well dried up. So we live out in the country and we have a shallow well. And we had a drought. Obviously, we've had pretty severe drought the past few years. So our well dried up. So we were without water all winter. We were making it work by utilizing family members' homes while they were on vacation, which was extremely wonderful and just tremendously gracious of them. And it was great. I'm so thankful that they were able to do that for us. And it just worked out perfectly, really. But it was still very stressful for us. I mean, we were basically living between two houses, keeping up two houses, going back and forth in and out of town. We also had a ton of snow out here this year. Not a ton of snow, I guess, but a lot of blizzards. And it was insane. There was many times that we were snowed in. Many times our heater went out through the winter, which I don't even know why that was happening. But it was all just, really coming to a head, boiling over. Eventually, we found out our septic lines had collapsed and we needed to replace them, which we did ourselves. So it has been a friggin' mess over here, you guys. So not that any of these are excuses for anything, but I just wanted to let you know that is why we had to be gone. We really couldn't manage much here, especially keeping up with the podcast. So with all of that being said, obviously we did not have a lot of free time to do research or do notes or record. Now, even with all that shitty shit that happened, a couple of good things did as well. Again, like I said, Christian accepted his job as a supervisor at a new company, and he's loving it. He's doing great. The new schedule is obviously wonderful for us as a family to have more time together. But yeah, it just kind of dug into our recording time, and that's okay. What matters is that he's happy with that new job, and he's loving it. So I'm so happy for him. Oh, and we did get a new puppy. I wanted to throw that out there. I'll post a picture of him on our socials. He's a Border Collie Australian Shepherd Blue Heeler mix, and his name is Timber, and he is the sweetest little boy. He was the best Christmas present. I got him around February, but he's still the Christmas present of the year. So, however, even though it is great news that Christian has his wonderful new job, I'm sad to say that today would have been his last formal episode with me as my co-host. From here on out, it'll just be me. It's harder to make sure that we are both together to record and having time to do all post-production and such. It's a lot easier if I just record on my own. It makes me sad. We had a lot of fun doing our first season together and growing the podcast, but he's still my husband, so he is still around. And like I said, hopefully he will still be editing and producing for us, and I'm sure he'll pop in from time to time. But I'm so excited, and I cannot wait to bring you the content I have planned for you guys this season. It's going to be a great one. And I hope you all are excited to join me for it. Okay, all. So remember to like, rate, review, subscribe, comment, whatever it is you can do on whichever platform you use. Remember to visit our website at particularlypeculiar.com, where you can find all of our socials, a link to our store, and a contact form where you can send us a message with ideas for episodes or even share a peculiar story of your own. You will also find the donation tab there if you would like to help out the show. That's all that I have for you today. We will see you again soon. Until next time, our peculiar people.